Coverkiller Nation, it is time for us to slow the pace down a little bit. Thus far here in February, we have been speaking about thrash, we've been speaking about good old-fashioned classic rock and roll, and we've talked about technical death metal. It's time for us to slow things down to a haunting post-rock drone doom styling. It's time for us to talk about the second album in the Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light series by the band Earth. Now, the first album in this series was released in 2011, and originally the intent was for both albums to be released within the same year, as the sessions had occurred at the same time. However, instead, the album has been blessed upon us here in 2012, and it is now time for us to speak about it. Now, Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light Part 1 has a very varied reaction to it whenever it was released. Some people hailed this as a terrific album, a landmark album for the band, that really signaled that this kind of difference in their style from their original inception had really come full force. That the previous album was not merely just a one-off, the previous EP was not merely just a continuation of that, but they had kind of embraced this more post-rock, this more post-doom, this post-drone style for the long haul. And whenever a second album in this series, whenever a second part in this album was really announced and was blessed forth, it really seemed as though that perhaps this would be an album full of duality. This would be an album that maybe was a very similar to a Deliverance and Damnation by Opeth. Maybe a lot of people were thinking that there was going to be one side that was going to be a little bit softer, a little bit more akin to the new style, while the second part perhaps would be more reminiscent of the styles of old. However, whenever you listen to Part 2 of Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light, you actually start to assemble the view that perhaps it is the softer of the two. That actually what you heard last year is the harder edged of the two albums. These albums are both laced with minimalism. They are abstractly minimal, but in a way in which can be easily digested. And I say it in this format because you listen to an album such as Lulu, that could be diagnosed as being minimalist or as being abstract. And whenever you listen to that, you really understand the term perhaps to its fullest of extents, because it is something that you either really love it, you really hate it. There's really no in-between. There's not a lot of people that are just going to say that the album's just okay. It's something that really is just so polarizing that no middle ground can even be tread, almost as though the middle ground is some sort of forbidden zone. With an album such as this one, there is room for a middle ground. There's room for a lot of people to listen to this record and embrace it as being not one of their strongest, but at the same time not at all one of their weakest. It's an album that's laced with beauty, but at the same time it's done so in a very unique way. The minimalism is something that is been an Earth signature because of the drone styles, because of the doom styles, but with this incorporation of almost like a post-rock type thing to add on to it, it almost has this very dreamy style to it, this dreamy feel to it. But pay mind to this. This is not necessarily, whenever you think of minimalism, some sort of chamber music that you're going to just listen to and perhaps then either throw into your vault, either that or something that you'd like to maybe hear once at a live performance, and that would be about it. No, this is instead minimalism. This is instead an album that has a very strange dynamic to it where, yes, it does have a very light-footed tone to it, where you can almost see the angelic side if you want to be really metaphoric about this, you can almost see the light side of it, in the form of it just being very soft and kind of very, there's not a lot of abrasion to it. However, whenever you listen to it on a musical level, you start to realize that there's a lot of very abrasive or very dissident stylings being done with the songcraft. You're not going to hear... This is not something where, for example, you're listening to chamber music that's fluttering on about rites of spring and love and happiness and poppy fields and bullshit like that. No. Instead, we're taking a trip, really, down to hell. Whenever you think of the title Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light, the oxymorons that occur in both of those statements really are non-present, because they are speaking about demons. They're speaking about, they're speaking about a very anti-religious sort of semblance, at least in the very in the very simplistic format of pure language. Now, whenever you listen to these albums, both of them, there are always highlights for me. There's always accents for me, things that really jump out and just take me for a ride. For me, on part one, it was Old Black. Old Black just started the album off with such a great way, not to mention is just one of the most solid songs that their catalog has boasted within this new format. I really enjoyed this. It's even better, it even topped Miami Morning Coming Down and things like that from previous releases. However, on part two, it is a multiplicity of doors that really just threw me through this real thrill ride and just actually inspired me to write, and that's something that is very important to me, something that I kind of do in my spare time, but has always been a very important part of my life. So whenever a multiplicity of doors was able to really give me those that inspiration and really give me that desire, once again, it's something that kind of brings up an overall value. But whenever you talk and whenever you look at it from a musical scale, this is the song that really just, it's right there in the middle of the album, and it gives you a great body to the record and a great body to the release. This is not to say that the other tracks on this album are slouches by any comparison. No, not whatsoever. And it just seems like the two songs that preceded are a little bit more mellow, a little bit softer, a little bit more low-key, but are still trying to build up to that body. And afterward, it seems as though they kind of got on a roll a little bit, and the remainder of the album kind of maintains that and kind of keeps it on that same guild. But right there in that middle part, right whenever that song hit, was whenever I really just started to fall in love with this release. And it's something where the mellow parts were not necessarily bad. It was just something that, for me, it just seemed kind of dreamy, and once again accented that whole idea that this is the softer of the two releases. Overall, whenever you listen to both of these records back to back, it just has this really unique atmosphere to it. It's something that does embody a bit of time, not to mention also will maybe test some people's patience, especially traditional metal fans that are used to things that are very aggressive, very quick, very speedy. Something that Earth does not at all cater to. But whenever you listen to it, you get a really nice feel to the overall embodiment of the sessions that were undertook in order to produce these two albums. It just really has that feel to just a haunting, brooding, dreamy, minimalist dreamland. And it just, it really, there are no better words that I could really concoct in order to describe it. This is a very nice release, and it's an excellent compliment to part one. If you enjoyed part one, then part two is something that's going to be right up your alley, and you're going to enjoy this a great deal. If you're still a little bit upset over the fact that Earth has kind of shifted and moved away from the sounds of old, well, you'll have to get used to it, because this is definitely proof alone that this is here to stay. This has now been 3 albums at least that they have embraced this style, and this is something that they have moved forward with. The incorporation of cello in this is beautiful. The percussion is very aptly placed. In fact, it just seems as though everything is in its proper place, even though it sometimes feels as though they are being incorporated at random. However, whenever you listen to it as a sound whole, it works, and it works really well. This is what you expect from minimalist music. This is what you think about. You think about something that's very simple. You think about something that is extremely low-key, something that doesn't require a lot of thought, maybe, for a listener, but something that also is very digestible, something that has enough to keep you reeled in. This album has that.